I'm currently sitting in front of my laptop, my fingers hovering over the keys, trying to make sense of the nightmarish events we've just endured. The horrors we've unearthed linger in my mind, like a terrible dream that refuses to dissolve with the dawn. My therapist suggested writing everything down to process the trauma, she said. It's easy for her to say that from the comfort of her cushy armchair, with her degrees on the wall and that professional empathy perfected over years of dealing with people like me. But where do I even start? At the beginning, I guess. So, here it goes. My name's Reine. In another life, I was a detective for the New Orleans Police Department, but I left disillusioned by the unyielding corruption and ineptitude. I couldn't stand being a part of a system that turned a blind eye to injustice and suffering. Nowadays, I work with my husband, Asher. We run a private investigation firm, tackling cases that fall through the cracks, cases that others are too afraid or too dismissive to touch. It was just another scorching summer day in New Orleans when it all began. I remember how the oppressive humidity hung in our French Quarter office, like a specter, wrapping its sticky tendrils around everything. The air conditioning provided a comforting drone. I was leafing through a seemingly endless stack of case files, their details blurring together, when I found myself staring across the desk at Asher, my partner in both life and crime solving. He was hunched over his computer, scrutinizing the digital blueprints of a building related to our latest case. His short black hair was starting to show the first signs of silver around the temples, a subtle nod to his approaching middle age. A strong, angular jaw adorned with a dusting of stubble, adding a rugged charm to his features. His deep brown eyes, expressive and warm, held 1,000 untold stories. They were the kind of eyes that draw you in and don't let go, an enticing mix of wisdom, mystery, and a dash of playful mischief. His face bore the scars of his past, a poignant reminder of the IED explosion that nearly claimed his life as a young Marine in Iraq. "Find anything interesting?" His voice, calm and soothing, broke the silence. "Just the usual," I replied, rubbing my temples to ward off the encroaching headache. "Cheating spouses, insurance scams, the glamorous life of a private eye." He chuckled, a low, warm rumble that echoed in our small hole-in-the-wall office. "Hey, did you forget about last week? We rescued Mrs. Dorsey's cat. What was his name? Sir Fluffington? We're heroes." "Ah, right. The case of the feline fugitive," I laughed, shaking my head at the ridiculousness of the incident. It wasn't really a case. Our elderly neighbor, Mrs. Dorsey's tabby cat, had gone missing, and she had asked us to help find him. As it turned out, Sir Fluffington had trapped himself inside her pantry, amidst cans of tuna and bags of dried kibble. "But yes, I suppose that was our one good deed of the week," I giggled. Our light-hearted moment was interrupted when Abby, our young secretary, poked her head into the office. The urgency in her wide, hazel eyes was a contrast to her usual composed demeanor. "Reine, there's a woman on the line, a Therese LeBlanc from Cameron Parish. It's about her daughter. She sounds distraught. I think you should handle this one." I shot a glance at Asher, eyebrows furrowed. Cases from outside the city were rare, especially as far away as Cameron. "Thank you, Abby," I responded. "Patch her through my phone." "Hello, Mrs. LeBlanc?" I asked, picking up the call, keeping my voice steady. A crackle filled the room as the line connected, followed by a timid, "Bonjour? Is this Detective Tron?" The woman's voice had a distinct Cajun accent, the kind you only really hear in the rural parts of Louisiana. There was an urgency in her tone, a desperate plea for help. "Yes, ma'am. This is Rainy Tran," I replied. "I have you on speaker. My partner Asher is also here with me. How can we help you, Mrs. LeBlanc?" Tears were evident in her voice as she choked out her story. "Ma fille, my daughter Gabrielle, she's 17, she just never came home one day. Been 2 weeks now. Gabby ain't the kind of girl to run away, you gotta believe me. She was always home on time, did her chores without fuss. She's a good girl." My heart clenched as I heard the pain in Mrs. LeBlanc's voice. It was a sound all too familiar in our line of work. Desperation, fear, the gnawing uncertainty. I exchanged a glance with Asher, the silent understanding passing between us. This was the kind of case we lived for. "Mrs. LeBlanc?" Ash chimed in, his voice as steady as a rock. "Did you contact the local police?" A bitter laugh echoed from the other end of the line. "Yes, I did. But dem officers, they're treating it as if she's just a runaway teen. They say she'll come back when she feels like it. But I know my Gabby, she wouldn't do dat. Something's wrong." "I'm so sorry you're going through this, ma'am," I said softly. The desperation in her voice was palpable. Here was a mother, helpless and terrified, reaching out for help. Her desperation resonated with me. I knew that feeling all too well, the gnawing fear of not knowing if your loved one is safe. "Could you send us a photo of her? And any other information that you think could help us in our search?" I requested. "Yes, ma'am. I'll send you everything I got," Therese replied. A few minutes later, an email notification pinged on my phone. I quickly opened it to find a photo attached. It was a picture of a young girl dressed for what looked like a high school prom. She was beautiful, with wavy chestnut hair that fell in loose curls to her shoulders, her light amber eyes brimming with life and spirit. Her smile was radiant, lighting up her eyes, but there was an unmistakable shadow there, an underlying unease that didn't quite match the joyous occasion. I took a deep breath, pressing further. "You mentioned that you don't believe Gabrielle ran away. Can you tell us why you believe that?" "Because..." She hesitated, sniffled, then continued in a stronger tone. "A week after she went missing, I received a voicemail from Gabby. She sounded scared. I could hear her crying. I'll forward it to you." A moment later, another email pinged on my phone. It was an audio file, just 18 seconds long. Asher moved closer, his chair screeching on the hardwood floor as I hit play. The audio file was scratchy and filled with static. The voice of a young girl was barely discernible through the noise. Maman, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to..." She sobbed, the desperation in her voice heart-wrenching. "Maman, it's so dark. I'm scared." She whimpered, her voice trembling with fear and confusion. There was a muffled sob, barely audible, then a chilling whisper. I can hear the water and something else." Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Abby, her normally sunny disposition replaced with a deathly pallor. Suddenly, Gabby's voice rose, tremulous and terrified. "I see the face in the bayou, blood moon on the water." The audio abruptly shifted. A low, guttural snarl rippled through the static, a sound so primal, so alien, it sent chills racing down my spine. The peaceful silence of our office was shattered by that gut-wrenching noise, replaced by a heavy, ominous dread. There was a rustling sound, a struggle, the desperate gasp of someone fighting against the impending darkness. Gabby's sobs hitched, transforming into terrified shrieks that echoed in the small room. It was the sound of pure, unadulterated fear, a sound that could curdle blood. Non, aide-moi, maman." Gabby pleaded for her mom to save her with gasping breaths. "Aide-moi." This was followed by what sounded like a desperate struggle, fabric tearing and muffled screams, as if the phone was dropped. Gabby's terrified screams filled our small office, the raw fear in her voice echoing through the room. She called out for her maman one last time before being cut off suddenly. Then, silence. A chilling, absolute silence that left an echo of dread in its wake. The eerie voicemail echoed in our minds. The very air around us seemed to grow colder, and a sense of unease settled over us. Ash finally broke the silence. He asked, "Mrs. LeBlanc, did this call come from Gabrielle's phone?" There was a pause, and when she spoke again, her voice was trembling. "Non." It came from an unknown number. I felt a knot in my stomach, my mind whirling with what this could mean. "Did you show the police the voicemail, Mrs. LeBlanc?" "I did," she replied, her voice laced with bitterness. "They said it sounded like a prank call. They told me there's no evidence of foul play. They said kids these days are capable of anything for attention." My fingers tightened around the phone, my knuckles whitening as I battled to keep a string of curses at bay. I knew the system, I knew how dismissive it could be, but hearing it so directly and from a desperate mother was a harsh blow. "I'm so sorry to hear that," I said, my voice a low murmur. "I can't even imagine what you must be going through." She exhaled heavily on the other end of the line, her breath hitching. "I don't know where else to turn," she admitted, sounding weary. "Gabby's all I have." I glanced over at Asher, his expression mirroring my own, a mix of resolve and quiet determination. He nodded at me, a silent agreement passing between us. "Mrs. LeBlanc, we'll take the case," I said, my voice filled with a conviction that I hoped would bring her some comfort. "We'll do everything we can to find Gabrielle." There was a pause on the other end, and then I heard her exhale, a sob hitching in her throat. "Merci, detectives, merci." "You don't have to say anything," Asher reassured her, his voice soft and soothing. "Just get us everything you can on Gabrielle. Pictures, text messages, information about her friends, anything that could help us find her." "I will do that. Again, thank you both so much," Therese said, her voice filled with gratitude and a glimmer of hope. As we ended the call, I felt a chill settle over the room. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows in our office. The reality of what we'd just committed to was slowly sinking in. We were about to delve into the unknown, into the heart of the Bayou, chasing after a sinister mystery that had swallowed a young girl whole. But we were ready. We had to be. I turned to Asher, determination stealing my voice. "Let's get to work." Asher and I spent the evening poring over the details that Therese had sent us. We sipped on cups of lukewarm coffee, our dining table transformed into a makeshift war room, littered with photos, printouts of text conversations between Gabby and her mother, and screenshots of her social media activity. It was like trying to piece together a jigsaw puzzle without having any idea of what the final image should look like. The texts revealed nothing unusual. There were no heated arguments, no mention of a new boyfriend, or signs of a secret life. On social media, her posts were mundane and innocent: family photos, selfies with friends, chats about school and weekend plans. We scrutinized each detail, looking for any clue, any hint that could lead us to her. There was nothing that hinted at a motive for Gabby to run away. No signs of struggle at home, no obvious signs of depression or anxiety. She was a regular teenager, on the cusp of adulthood, full of potential, her life ahead of her. We also listened to Gabby's voicemail message again and again, trying to decode the cryptic phrases, "the face in the bayou" and "blood moon on the water." These enigmatic words felt like they held the key to her whereabouts, if only we could decipher their meaning. As the clock ticked towards the early hours of the morning, we reluctantly decided to call it a night. Sleep, when it came, was restless and filled with nightmarish images of Gabby's face, her pleading eyes, and that haunting voicemail playing on a loop. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold, we found ourselves back in our office, packing for our trip to see Therese. The morning light did little to ease the chill of uncertainty that had settled in the pit of my stomach. As I bustled around, packing essentials and retrieving necessary files, I rattled off instructions to Abby. "Remember, Mr. Farley's case isn't pressing. He's just convinced his business partner is embezzling funds. We'll deal with him when we get back. And Mrs. Johnston needs to know we've found proof of her husband's infidelity. She'll need support and resources." She gave me an understanding nod, her hazel eyes reflecting the seriousness of the situation. "Of course, Reine. I've got everything under control. You and Ash just..." Just bring that girl home." I smiled at her, though I wasn't sure how convincing I appeared. "That's the plan." I walked outside to find Asher already loading our equipment into the SUV. Among the pile of items were an array of investigative tools: cameras, recording devices, GPS tracker, aerial drone, and other necessary gadgets. The dawning light lent an intense aura to the scene. Ash went to the back of the car, his hand on a secret compartment built into the vehicle's floor. With a swift twist of a hidden latch, he opened it, revealing a small, compartmentalized arsenal of weapons. He selected 2 Glock 19 handguns, sturdy and reliable, their black surfaces reflecting the sunlight. "Here." Ash handed me one of the pistols, his eyes meeting mine. There was a hint of concern in those warm depths, a silent reminder of the danger we were walking into. With practiced ease, I checked the chamber, ensured the magazine was full, and then slid the semi-automatic into my concealed carry holster. It was a comforting weight against my hip, a small but significant piece of security in the chaos we were about to dive into. Ash must have sensed my unease, despite my best efforts to keep it hidden beneath my usually cool exterior. He looked at me, the worry lines etched across his forehead. Closing the trunk with a sharp click, he stepped towards me, his dark eyes searching mine for a moment before he reached out, taking my hand in his own. His touch was warm, grounding, a gentle reassurance amidst the uncertainty. "You can do this, Reine," he encouraged me, his voice carrying a note of firm determination. I nodded, unable to find my voice. His confidence was infectious, a beacon of hope in the face of the unknown. I let his words wash over me, a soothing balm to my rising apprehension. The 4-hour drive through Cajun country was an unbroken ribbon of looming cypress trees, endless marshland, and backwater towns, each with its own secrets lurking in the swamps. Thick clouds hovered overhead like an oppressive blanket, turning the normally vibrant landscape into a monotone painting. The car sliced through the humid air, creating a temporary path in the fog that always seemed to linger on the roads. As the journey continued, the radio played old Zydeco tunes, a pulsating rhythm that usually stirred the spirit, but now seemed to echo the heavy thumping of my heart. While Asher drove, I took in the idyllic sights that passed by: tiny chapels hidden behind Spanish moss, weather-worn shacks on stilts, and pirogues floating idly on the bayou. Each was a ghost, haunting me with memories I thought I'd left behind. In the rearview mirror, my gray eyes reflected the foreboding sky, hinting at a tempest within me as dark and tumultuous as the one I was driving into. The town of Bellefontaine gradually materialized from the hazy afternoon sun, a collection of homes and businesses cradled precariously between the bayou and the wild southern woods. Its structures, old and weather-beaten, reflected the quiet resilience of the town's inhabitants against the elements. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the small town. The residents bore the markings of Cajun life, faces etched by hard living and a slow, measured pace reflecting the bayou's rhythm. Yet their eyes shimmered with a vibrant spirit, alive like the swamp's twinkling fireflies. We pulled up to Teresa's place, a stilted bungalow with weathered, peeling paint, clinging desperately to its wooden frame. A large, gnarled cypress stood like a sentinel in the yard, its mossy branches swaying gently in the warm breeze. The home was modest but inviting, adorned with hanging baskets of vibrant flowers that bloomed defiantly in the afternoon light. As I stepped out of the car, Teresa emerged from the house to greet us, wiping her hands on a well-worn apron. Her silver-streaked brunette hair frames a face etched with the resilience of time. A flicker of surprise crossed her face when she saw me. I supposed I didn't fit the image she'd constructed from our phone conversation. Her gaze scanned me from head to toe, seemingly looking for something, her brows furrowing for a moment. The surprise was quickly replaced by gratitude, relief so palpable that I could almost touch it. "Detective Tran," she greeted, stretching out a trembling hand to meet mine. "Thank you for coming." Her grip was shaky but firm, a testament to the strength that she was trying to maintain in the face of her worst nightmare. I looked into her weary eyes, offering her a small, comforting smile. "Call me Reine, please," I said softly, squeezing her hand gently. "This is my partner, Ash." "Thank you, Ash," she said, taking Ash by the hand, her eyes welling up. "Y'all can call me Therese." We reassured her that we were there to help, and together we walked into her home. The house was simple and homely, filled with photographs and mementos of happier times. On one wall, a large family portrait caught my eye, a younger Therese with her late husband and a baby Gabrielle. Gabrielle's vibrant smile was unmistakable, even as a child. Therese led us to the living room. She motioned for us to take a seat on the cozy, sun-bleached couch and poured us each a cup of strong, bitter coffee. Therese handed us the cups, cradling her own close to her chest. The steam danced up in front of her face, momentarily hiding the lines of worry etched deeply into her features. The smell of the brew brought back distant memories of my own mother's kitchen, and I shook them away with a sip. Business, Reine, stay focused. She took a deep breath and reached for a photo album resting on a side table. The album, well worn and creased around the edges from years of use, held a lifetime of memories. She carefully opened it and began guiding us through the pages, narrating each chapter of Gabrielle's life. "Das ma petite," she said, her accent curling around the words as she pointed to a picture of a younger Gabby, her small hands delicately poised over the strings of a miniature violin. She picked up the violin when she was just 6, took to it like a gator to water. Ash and I listened intently, making mental notes of the information we were gathering. Gabby's passion for the violin was clear. It shone through every photograph, her face always lighting up in the presence of the instrument. "Did she have a particular place where she liked to play?" Ash asked gently, his gaze never leaving the images of Gabby. Therese paused, a thoughtful look crossing her face. "Gabby loved to play out by the Bayou. Said the music sounded better there, echoed through the trees just right," she said, her fingers lightly tracing over a picture of Gabrielle playing her violin in the swampy woods. Therese gently turned the pages of the album as if afraid of disturbing the memories captured within its pages. "Did Gabrielle mention anything unusual to you?" Ash asked. "Before she disappeared, did she seem troubled or worried about something?" The lines on Therese's face seemed to deepen as she considered my question. "She's been restless lately," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Like she was anticipating something." "Can you recall anything specific?" I interjected, leaning forward. Therese shook her head slowly. "Nah, nothing specific, just a feeling, you know." We understood. Often feelings and hunches were all we had to work with in the beginning. Every lead mattered, no matter how insignificant it might seem. After a moment's silence, I decided to tread into deeper waters. "Therese, did Gabby have any reason you know of to run away?" The question hung heavily in the air, charged with the unspoken fear of parents everywhere. Therese took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the mug as she considered my question. No. Gabby wouldn't run away. She just graduated high school, you know." She sighed, the sound heavy with weariness. "She was so excited about going to LSU. Got a full-ride scholarship and everything. She loved this town, but she was ready to see the world, to make her mark." Therese's conviction echoed in the quiet room, painting a picture of a young girl full of dreams and ambitions, of a life yet to be lived. But as a detective, I had learned to be cautious about accepting everything at face value. My gaze met Ash's, his eyes echoing my own thoughts. We needed to delve deeper, to find any thread that might lead us to Gabrielle. "Can we take a look at Gabby's room?" I asked, hoping it might provide some clues. Therese nodded, setting her mug aside and standing up. Sure thing, detective. I mean Reine. She corrected herself with a little smile. Therese guided us up a narrow staircase, her hand gliding gently along the banister. The second floor was smaller, more intimate. 2 doors stood opposite each other, one leading to what I assumed was Therese's bedroom, the other marked by a laminated placard that read, "Gabby's Sanctuary, led us to the girl's personal space." Gabrielle's room was a reflection of her personality, at once both typical of a teenager and yet uniquely her own. Posters of rock bands and classical composers hung side by side on the walls, a testament to her diverse musical taste. A wooden music stand held sheets of music, filled with annotations in Gabrielle's neat handwriting. What struck me the most, however, was the missing violin. The empty stand stood like a gravestone, casting a long shadow in the afternoon light. "Her violin," Therese began, her voice choked with emotion. "She'd never leave it behind." As I began sifting through the room for any physical leads, Ash settled at her desk, firing up her laptop. From the corner of my eye, I could see Ash's barely concealed frustration as he was unable to log in. Therese approached him, a small piece of paper clutched tightly in her hand. She handed it over, her eyes filled with a mix of concern and curiosity. "Try this," she suggested. "It's the password. We share the laptop." The comment caught me off guard. "Share?" I asked, incredulous. "Isn't that Gabby's personal laptop?" Therese shook her head, her eyes downcast. "No, it's the family laptop. We can't really afford more than one. Gabby's the one who really uses it, though. I mostly just use it to check my email." I glanced at Therese, surprised. "And she's okay with that? Most teenagers I know keep their laptops like Fort Knox." Therese simply shrugged, a tender smile tugging at the corners of her lips. "I guess. But Gabby and I were close. We don't keep secrets from each other." Simultaneously, I was going through Gabrielle's closet, thumbing through the assortment of blouses, dresses, and jackets. I felt something rough and coarse under my fingertips, pulling out a pale pink sweater with patches of strange fur clinging to it. "Therese," I called, holding up the sweater. "Do you have any pets?" Therese shook her head. "Non, cher. I'm allergic to dander. We've never had pets." I bagged the sweater for further examination, the mystery of the strange fur adding another layer to our investigation. From the other side of the room, Ash looked up from the MacBook he had been examining. "Her search history's been wiped clean," he said, his brow furrowed in thought. "She didn't want us to see something." "That's weird," I muttered to myself. I surveyed the room more thoroughly, looking for anything else that might provide a clue to her whereabouts. My gaze fell to the floor, noticing the edges of an oddly placed rug. Kneeling down, I found a subtle indentation that marked the outline of a small square compartment. I pushed the rug aside and gingerly worked my fingers into the indentation. With a soft click, a concealed latch sprang open, lifting a section of the wooden floor to reveal a hidden space. Inside, there was a shoebox, which I carefully lifted out. It was surprisingly heavy for its size. Opening the box, I discovered an envelope full of money, over $1,000 in cash. I was taken aback. What could a teenager need with such an amount? Digging further, I pulled out a name tag. La Bête du Bayou, it read, the words elegantly scripted on the small piece of plastic. The Beast of the Bayou? An employee tag? From where? A bar? A restaurant? A shop? My mind was reeling with possibilities. The last item in the box was a sketchbook. The worn leather cover was soft beneath my fingertips, the pages within heavy and filled with Gabby's artistic expressions. The initial sketches were typical of a teenager, doodles of her friends, her family, her school. Some pages were filled with impressively detailed renditions of the Bayou, but as I flipped further into the book, the tone of her drawings shifted drastically. There were sketches that were less grounded in reality, more abstract, and shockingly disturbing. Figures were twisted into impossible shapes, Eyes were devoid of pupils, and faces were trapped in silent screams. Interspersed between these disturbing images were pages filled with complex geometric patterns. These designs hinted at hidden meanings. One image in particular made my blood run cold. It was a self-portrait of Gabby, drawn with a harsh, almost violent intensity. In the image, something seemed to be growing inside of her, a dark, serpentine form that twisted around her organs, its head nestled against her heart. It had eyes that stared straight out of the sketch, the lines so intensely dark they seemed to burn holes in the page. "Ash," I called out, my voice trembling slightly. "You need to see this." "This isn't just a girl running away," he murmured, standing next to me, running his fingers lightly over the rough lines of the sketch. "Something else is going on." Therese, who had been quietly watching from the doorframe, took a step into the room. "What's that?" she asked, her gaze falling on the sketchbook. I held it open for her to see, and her face paled. "Mon Dieu! She never showed me these," Therese muttered, her hand reaching out to touch the paper gently. "Oh, Gabriel." We sat there in silence for a moment, taking in the horrifying revelation. The sketches hinted at a terror that seemed to be consuming Gabby from the inside. We had to find her, and fast.